out there.
Okay. Call the meeting to order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome everybody to the meeting.
Thank you.
I don't see any public participation out there. So we'll do a roll call. Yeah, sorry.
Mr. Reeser?
Here.
Mrs. Rowe?
Here.
Mrs. Tipping?
Here.
Mr. Burrow?
Here.
And Mr. Wagner?
Here.
Okay. First thing on the agenda would be Patty's legislative report, which is a lot going on.
Oh, my Lord. Yes, this is as was sent to you all earlier, and I had even more. I tried to condense it, and but this had so much. This is one of our longest reports of the month, and I had focused on the most recent 2 weeks, and it really, the best form was the one that John has kind enough to share with me, which was a highlighted. It really boils down to House Bill 164, and that is the one that the Governor DeWine signed on June 19th, and that's where it was originally on about religion and expression of religion, I believe, and then it was added, as often happens with the bills, was added and grew, and that is where it came into the House bill as it affects us more. And the main things that happens that affects us is the remote learning and minimum hours of instruction. I'll just read the highlight bullet points. Funding for the fiscal year 2020, teacher assignment and licensure, online bus driver certification program, end of course examinations, teacher and principal evaluations, and third grade reading guarantee. And so it says the main thing that is really focusing with us right now that we're trying to do is the remote learning and minimum hours of instruction. And that portion says that it permits the districts that have not been approved to use the blended learning that they can submit their plans that they would like to use the remote learning, which we've already done, and we've already been acknowledged by ODE that they've received our form, and that they do not have to approve our plans, but we just have to submit the formal plans by November 1st. Funding, it affects, and Kristen will speak to that much more than I can, but it requires that the ODE makes payments to districts whose funding for the fiscal year 2020 as determined by the state budget reduction and funding from the CARES Act is less than 94% of its funding calculated before the state budget reduction. Then for the teacher assignment and licensure, it allows superintendents to employ or reassign a licensed teacher that has 3 or more years of teaching experience to teach a subject area or grade level for which the teacher is not licensed that is within 2 grades of the teacher's licensure grade band. So in other words, that gives us a little more flexibility there. Online bus driver certification program requires the ODE to develop an online bus driving training program to satisfy the classroom portion of the pre-service and annual in-service training for the 2020-2021 school year. The on-the-bus driving for training for the drivers will still be completed in person. The end-of-course exams, it allows students who were unable to take or retake end-of-course exams in the 2019 to 2020 school year due to cancellation of such exams to earn points towards their graduation requirements based on their final grade for the course. Teacher and principal evaluations, it prohibits the school district from using the value-added data, high-quality student data, or other student academic growth data to measure the student learning attributable to a teacher or a principal while conducting evaluations for the 2020-21 school year. Districts may continue to consider as part of the teacher and principal evaluation how the teachers and principals collect, analyze, and use the student data, blah, blah. And then third grade reading guarantee, it prohibits retaining a third grader who fails to attain a passing score on the 2020 fall administration of the third grade English language arts assessment if the student's principal and reading teacher agree that other evaluations of the student's skill in reading demonstrate the student is academically prepared for promotion. Those are the main highlights that are directly affecting us that John highlighted thank you very much for sharing that. That was much better than me trying to piecemeal all the little bits I was getting.
We've always, well, I shouldn't say always because it's only been around a few years, but the 3-year third grade reading guarantee we've done very well on. Are we able to say that again? Or?
Yeah, this, if you recall, typically we would do a spring assessment, which is the final assessment. We couldn't give that. The flexibility the state's granted us in 164 allows us to move those students on. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that one of the greatest concerns public schools have right now is their struggling readers and where we're going to get them in the fall and how we catch them up. We are moving all of our third graders on. We feel comfortable doing that, but we're going to have a lot of work to do with that fourth grade group and then our K through 3 kiddos in the fall. So we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on ELA in all of our professional development because we may need to sacrifice time in a few other categories because kids are going to need, especially our pre-K 3 kiddos, for really more support from a reading perspective. I have a 9-year-old who was in third grade last year, and it's amazing to see, what taking them out of that routine structure with a professional does that cannot be replicated at home. And we tell folks all the time, and we got a lot of kids reading this summer, which was awesome. But it doesn't replace that teacher who knows the specific skills those kids need. So from that perspective, yes, we feel confident in what we're doing, but we're going to have a lot of ELA work.
So we'll be on top of that at the beginning of the year, make sure
Absolutely.
Okay, we got all the resources we need.
Yep.
Sounds good. Thank you, Patty. Anybody else have anything for Patty? Jonathan,
No hard questions. No.
Superintendent's report,
I'll
please.
start, just kind of dovetail with Patty's report, and I was on a BASA superintendent call today. There are just a flurry of Senate and House bills out there. One that's getting a decent amount of publicity from public schools and probably from lots of entities is Senate Bill 606, I think is what it is. Essentially, it's it's House Bill 606. It is what we're calling the immunity bill, and it's entities requesting that they're held harmless if there is a COVID expense. There is, and we met with our insurance carrier today to get some clarification. Most insurance providers right now are saying, we'll cover your normal expenses, your normal operations, but anything that is COVID related, I don't necessarily know that those are things we're going to cover. Well, so the state legislature has been approached by basically everyone to say, if we're going to run school in the fall, specifically from a public school perspective, we need to know from a legislative perspective that we're going to do the best of our ability within the guidelines set out. But are we immune from some of this? Because there's lots that we cannot control. And so that is in the House. My understanding is that they feel they have good momentum around it, but it has not passed yet. That's a big one that's still left out there. House Bill 164 is I'm not going to rehash it, but that's a big one that was discussed today that gives us lots of flexibility. So that's another one to keep an eye on. I want to start my report or continue my report with a couple of acknowledgments. I'd be remiss if I didn't say today was the final day of work at Circleville City Schools for Tim Harris, our assistant principal at the elementary, who's done an amazing amount of good work, and he's headed to be a principal at Liberty Union, so he may not be watching, but I wanted to give him a shout out if he is. We will miss having him around. We're excited for Kurt Young to step into that role pending your approval this evening. And Lisa Hines. Lisa retired from the district. She's taking on a part-time role at the ESC. We had a small gathering for her yesterday, and those are folks that I know you all have worked with and we will miss deeply. So anyway,
And we could applaud
I do
them.
want to tell you that The chances they're watching this might be.
Yes, for the viewing
no.
audience.
Yesterday, so for 2 weeks, we've been told that Tuesday was the day. The governor was going to give us guidance on Tuesday.
Next week.
Tuesday. And then Tuesday came and Tuesday went and nada. The governor said what he said for a few weeks, that schools need to be flexible. We're not ready to provide guidance quite yet, but we want students back in the fall. When asked what that means, he said, you'll basically have to wait and see.
Find out next week.
I was told today during the BASA superintendent's meeting, the guidance is coming tomorrow. Mr. Uhrig said he will never believe it's ever coming until someone walks in this district and hands the form to him, because we've been told this for weeks now. And we don't blame anybody, but there is currently no guidance. We are working on a number of scenarios. We are working on every scenario from students being able to come back full tilt as normal. We're working on scenarios where students may have to alternate days. We are working on scenarios where, we have all kids online, which we've done, but now we need to enhance and do better. We're also working on scenarios where our transportation has to change. I will say, if there's any public watching, the one thing that we seem to be getting constant guidance on is that transportation is going to be very, very different, just because of the confines of buses. The original guidance from the CDC said one student every other seat.
Oh, my.
Then it kind of relaxed, and now it says one per seat. If that's the case for us, it's my goal to always be transparent. There is no physical way that we could transport students the way we currently transport them. It's just not physically possible. And there is no way from a cost and a personnel perspective that we could get enough buses or hire enough people to make it possible. So we are also building contingency plans on transportation, which is why we sent out the survey last week for parents to fill out, which we had a number of parents fill out, which was great. And the data from that came back and was kind of what we thought it would be, that 79% of families said they felt comfortable sending their student on the bus, and 74% said they plan to use the bus this year, which is, I'm really glad they feel confident in what we're doing. But if we have that amount of kids that want to ride, based on what we're hearing the guidance may be, there's going to be some adjustments. So this is me telling you that I feel pretty confident that our routing is going to look very different next year. And we're looking at what the state guidelines require versus what we do. And one of the things that is a consideration in a lot of districts across the state is not busing on a high school level. Again, it's not a decision we've made, and we would bring to this body before we made that decision. But we are trying to be as transparent as possible with families, and that is a huge conversation right now. So that was brought up in our health department meeting this morning with the local health officials, as well as a number of items. So I say all that to tell you that we don't have definitive guidance yet. They say it'll happen tomorrow. I'll believe it when I see it. But as soon as we get that, we will be working with our health department to send out a combined plan in the county. We don't want to be sending plans that look and feel and act differently than what our counterparts in the county are doing, because that leaves all of us open to not what's best for kids in the county. So we met this morning as a superintendent group, and we're all committed to that. The local health department will dictate what our plan is. With all of that being said, on your agenda tonight, I am requesting that we move the student start date back to August 25th. And I want to say that in my report, because we don't have a plan currently, this gives us a few more days to have our staff on campus and for staff members to plan this new world that we're going to be living in, from social distancing to cleaning to maybe online instruction, those kinds of things. And to my knowledge, many of my colleagues across the state are making similar recommendations. I did not feel comfortable making a recommendation past Labor Day. But I will tell you, I was on a phone call with Dr. Marie Ward from Fairfield County today, and she said that she's been told there's another House bill out there where they may mandate a post-Labor Day start, which is the same thing we've heard every year for the last 10 years. So, again, there's a lot of rumors, if you haven't heard.
Just, if I might, where are we at with the other county schools? We talked about wanting to work collaboratively. Are their start dates the same?
So our start date was actually a little ahead of most of them. So us moving back a week actually kind of aligns ours with the other county schools. I don't want to speak for those guys because I know they haven't done anything definitively. I know that's a conversation in some places. I don't know that any of them have done it yet. I do have colleagues in Central Ohio and north of Columbus that have moved past Labor Day, though, just to give themselves time. I have colleagues that have sent out communication to their community that has said, we do not feel comfortable providing a plan prior to August 1. That's not my stance or I know our stance, but because there are no answers right now, I mean, we're general, our 220-day assistant principals and principals, their last day of work is this week. So if they provide us a plan tomorrow, you're looking at the 4 of us that are going to be here creating that plan. We will not have another single staff member who's contracted to work. Again, our staff's great. They'll be here and they'll help us. But that's the kind of crunch we're in. We're going to get a guidance that we need to create a plan that typically takes us 4 months to create in the matter of 7 or 8 weeks. So pushing back a week, I hope parents understand. We didn't want to, we understand the difficulties, but this just gives us a better chance to be successful. Yeah.
Do we need some extended days for individuals?
We might, but we'll get to that. We'll just
approve?
plan on Mr. Urick creating the plan, and the rest of us.
Can we can approve that after if we need to?
Yeah,
Okay.
we could do that retroactively. I appreciate the mentioning of that.
So Labor Day is September 7th. You're saying a lot of schools are going
Yeah,
September 8th and later.
yeah.
Wow.
So, and that was one of our, had Labor Day been kind of the earlier portion of September, that might have made sense, but that's a whole 2 more weeks.
Yeah, it's 2 more weeks.
Yeah. So, and we believe once we get the guidance and the suggestions, we can make it happen. But those extra, handful of days will be big time for us. Yeah.
Which then also pushes your end of the year into June then.
Well, we are not going to make any recommendations to changing the student day or the
okay.
student calendar. So the calendar you have in front of you essentially just moves the student start date back to the 25th. The staff calendar does not change. Our staff reports the same. And if you recall, we're in hours, not days anymore. We have enough hours to allow for this and not make it up.
Great.
So the beauty of this scenario, if there is a beauty of this scenario, is that it has required us to look at our calendars a little differently. And I think, I appreciate Danielle Stoltz and the conversations we had. I think we're going to be able to provide, especially with the new online platform, maybe in the future, some more flexibility around what days look like and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but there will be no additional days for students at the end. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. A couple other things that I had. Part of our planning was surveying families, and one of the big questions we had for families was if they were interested in keeping their student online in the fall regardless. And we did the survey. We then took a team of folks who contacted every family and asked some questions about if they were genuinely interested in keeping their student home. So from our initial surveys, we had 1,200 total responses. We had 198 families who said they had an interest in keeping their student home in the fall. And then once we contacted all of those families, and thanks to Kate and Stephanie and Karen and Evan, we have currently 65 students who have an interest in remaining home in the fall based on what the current situation is. I will say that to also say we have a number of families who said, once I know what the fall plan is, I'll make that decision, which we understand.
Right.
We are planning to be able to roll any and all kids in and out of online, but that's the numbers as we currently have it. And it breaks down to almost 20 kids per building. It's we have a few more elementary kids than others, but I think it's about 17 or 18 middle school kids and about 17 or 18 high school kiddos. And on that, just for your all's reference, is next week we are going to require an application process for families to be online. It's a one-page document because there are going to be some new expectations for kids and families because of the way the platform will work. And so we will be sending out, starting next week, those families who said, yes, I'm interested, they'll get a one-page application. It's not cumbersome. There's no other documents they need to attach to it. So that way we can start to build our database on who our online learners are. So if folks are watching this and they made that intent, we will get that to them next week. We'll follow that up with all calls and other communications. Another thing I wanted to mention, and apologize, there is obviously a lot going on. In your board packet tonight, I would also be remiss if I didn't personally thank all of the folks who donated to the meal program. Susie's report told you, and I told you, since March, we have provided over 100,000 meals to the students of Circleville City Schools, as well as, if you recall, our meals at Mount Street were for any student or any child aged 3 to 19. So a number of those meals weren't even just for our students, they were for youth in our community. And we wrapped up our portion on Monday. A huge thanks to Susie, her staff, Mr. Uhrig was a big part of that, our bus drivers. But we brought in about $15,000 in donations and products for those folks that are listed in the donations portion this evening. We're providing them obviously a thank you, as well as kind of the tax form if they want to write that off. But as you note those folks in there, if you see them out in the community, please thank them. We do have a little bit of funding left over. Our next plan with some of those funds and any other donations folks want to make is we recognize that we want to be able to get hot meals out in our community. For students, it's harder to do that because we don't have a mobile unit to do that. And Susie and Evan and myself have been researching the ability to have some kind of food truck, if you will. And so any of the leftover donations and any new donations we get in, that's what we're going to try to save for in the future. So a huge thanks to them. The last thing I wanted to mention in my report is I've tried to keep a really good contact point with our local law enforcement, the police, and with the Sheriff's Department. I really appreciate what Sean does and what Robbie does, and there's a lot going on in the world and want to be as supportive as possible, as well as talk about what we're doing in the schools. I'm meeting with Robbie tomorrow. Sean and I talked today. We've got to move our meeting to next week, which is not a big deal, but we really appreciate them. I actually had a question for you. My understanding is Pick Ross may be hiring. Are they hiring an SRO? Do you know that?
I don't know.
Don't know that? Okay. I heard today they may be in the process of hiring one, so.
I thought they kind of used their instructors from,
Okay, from the criminal justice? Okay.
as well as done in the past. That doesn't mean that's not changing.
Well, I told Kyle I wanted to reach out to Dennis to kind of get a grasp on what, it sounded like they were hiring, and it was going to be commissioned and all that kind of stuff, so I was going to reach out to Dennis. But anyway, I wanted to let you know I have those meetings set up, and we'll meet with those folks about what next year from that perspective looks like. So that's all I have.
In regard to the SRO, the world's changing, as we've noted. Some other districts have come out and, I'll say, opposition. I don't know if that's the right word or not, to having uniformed law enforcement in the buildings. My opinion, and we can open this up for conversation, but my opinion, you're responsible for running the district, and if you ask me to have an SRO, I'm going to give you an SRO if I can. So that's, and I don't think it's a bad thing to have, but it's worth the conversation. So I take it, since you're meeting, that your intent would be?
Yeah, I have no intent of changing what we've done in the past, because I think, the relationship we have with both of those entities is very positive. It benefits our kids. I mean, we've seen just in the last 2 years, 2 major life instances, I mean, really 2 life-saving events from the girl at the middle school who was exploited, and our SRO is the one that, in conjunction with a staff member, was able to shut that down before that adult was able to come and pick her up from school, as well as, the homecoming event this year, as well as a number of different things that never get talked about. And the world is changed, or there's a lot going on, but we unfortunately still live in a world where we still live in the Columbine, Parkland, Sandy Hook, and we need to do it. I personally believe we have to do everything we can to protect, and I believe having an SRO on campus is a major portion of that for our students. So that is my intent. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments on that subject or questions?
I had in your board report on facilities, I saw a lot of your team out there planting flowers and stuff, so
Yeah.
that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
After we got done with one of the grab-and-go meals walking out, they were
Yeah.
all out there.
Yeah, Vicky
Sweating like
Scott
crazy,
and
so.
Kathy and Sue
Amy
Mays and
Reimer, I think, was
Amy,
out
and they
there.
just decided they wanted to upscale the landscaping, and if you've come in the last 2 days, you saw some new and cool
Yeah.
out there, that's kudos to them.
I like the
Great
big
job.
C.
Isn't it cool?
Yeah.
Hope the rocks stay
Awesome.
there. Don't touch the
Yeah,
rocks.
yeah.
I think, as you were asking, Tony, in regards to the resource officer, I think we just see how it evolves and how it moves forward and what works best for us in our district. And, and as we get questions or comments from our community, our students, our families, then we adjust things as needed. As you mentioned, there are school districts that are completely, opposing, having student resource officers in their buildings, and they do serve a vital, role and as well as a role model for lots of our students as well. And having them, and it's also the assurance for the teachers to know that they have that resource, hence the name, there if needed. And with our guidance counselors and nurses to be able to assist with, the mental health and our psychologists of our students, not only with the resource officer, but in conjunction and working together.
And I think something we need to keep in mind is, as the governor said many times over the past few weeks, every district's different. So,
That's right.
Folks seeing stuff on the news where districts are making changes, maybe, that may be the best for them. That doesn't mean it's the best for every district in the state. So, I think that's good.
Yeah. And I think, and also noticing in Jay's report, all of the different facility things, and Jonathan, you had mentioned that the facilities committee is going to meet
Yeah,
to go
I
over some of
appreciate-
those different things.
Yeah,
and-
Chris, I appreciate you bringing that up. I had it here, but I got a little long-winded. There are a number of facilities things going on. We've tried to educate the community on the project we had previously scheduled and budgeted for, which is the expansion of the bus lot, which is coming along well. It's a couple weeks behind just because of the rain, the torrential downpours we got there for a while. But that's going to provide us a really quick ROI on fuel cost and allow us to get all of our buses in the same lot. There's a lot of benefit to that. The next couple of things that, and one you have on the agenda this evening and the report you mentioned, Chris, tennis courts, as well as roofing, and to put it out publicly, meeting with the facilities committee and the actions this evening are not necessarily about 100% doing these projects. We recognize the climate in which we're in, funding scenarios where we lost almost $400,000 last year. Our job is to prepare to upgrade facilities to meet the needs of all of our students, and this is a part of our facilities plan. So the roofing is a portion of that, which Jay's done a great job of getting some of that reimbursed or work done based on the old warranty, and he's still looking into that, which is great. There are spots we're definitely going to need to take care of. Jeff and Tony, we wanted to get with you guys and see if we could schedule a meeting next week sometime. Jay, myself, and probably Kristen, to just kind of run through a few things. I don't know if you guys have.
Wednesday would probably be best for me. I can do morning or evening, whichever works.
July 1st?
Yeah.
That'll work for you.
Evening would be, later would be better for you, that's the day
Oh, okay.
We could do, why don't we do that day, let you close, Jay and I can handle it. That, you're gonna be, because your closing sometimes can, depending on what that all looks like. Why don't we do, is early or better?
Not this year.
Yeah, is early or better, is early good for you?
Yeah, anytime's fine with me. I'm good.
8 works. 8 o'clock on Wednesday. And please send me a reminder, because I'm bad.
I will.
I will put it in here,
Come
though.
get you out of bed if we have to. July 1st, well, you won't have, at that point, you'll be getting back from work, all right?
Yeah.
8 a.m., I'll send you guys a reminder. Okay, thank you.
And on that, I couldn't have been more disappointed in the roof report, but not surprised at the same time. And then, do we have a timeline on when the warranty we may know more about?
So
the
we've been able to get some of the work done. I was telling Patty before the meeting, we've had a few items that we've been able to go back on the warranty because the folks who did the work, we still had the contact, we got a hold of them, they came back and took care of it. We're still checking into that, so
Okay.
we'll have an update for you on that.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. A lot of those things we're going to have to take care of, though.
Right.
And hopefully before we get back to school, maybe even.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else for Jonathan? Kristen, treasurer's report.
The first thing I wanted to talk about was Frontline, and as you know, we've been trying to move to having a system all online so that if we have that need to work remotely, people will have access remotely or they can work on it here. And I wanted to let you all know that we were successful today. We finished getting all the personnel files transferred online, so that was a huge undertaking, and I really want to thank those women that helped us with that. Sue Mace volunteered a lot of her free time even to come in, and Kathy Webb and Karen Sabine, they worked very hard to help us get that accomplished, and that's finished today. And that kind of led us into another topic where we got to looking into putting the professional development form online. And as we worked with Frontline, they told us about a product they had that would house all professional development, additional college coursework, et cetera, and would allow us to use that with our LPDC committee and tie a lot of those features all together, and people would have access to that online, and we could run various reports from that. So we got interested in looking at that product, and during that conversation, it sort of grew into, well, our school psychologists are looking for a mental health option to help children, and they offer something there, and the school nurse also is looking for a product to use to track immunizations in school children's health records. So as we worked with them, they were able to bundle those products together, and we just confirmed this afternoon that our database would convert from the current product that we use for the children's health record into the Frontline product. So I apologize that we were not diligent in getting that on the agenda, but I put the information on your desk and would like us to recommend to allow us to enter into that contract. It will be less than $26,000, but I can't give you the final number tonight because she said if we could adopt this before June 30th, we would receive an additional discount. So it should be under that price. But this will allow us to keep all of our those database systems in the same product, and I think that'll be much easier for our staff to utilize. It'll be one system. They'll be very familiar with how to navigate through that, and I think it'll be a great addition to that product. So that's on your desk and the agenda now for consideration. This is also the time when we're getting ready to close our fiscal year. As you know, the fiscal year ends June 30th, so we are working diligently on that. Payroll has already been closed because we have a payroll due July 2nd. So it was a holiday, so we have already got that part done, and now we're just working on the budgetary side. So you'll see an appropriation and amended certificate document on your desk also. The appropriations, there were no changes, but I went ahead and included that. And then the amended certificate, which is the revenue side, basically, I had included some estimated amounts for the Federal Stimulus CARES Act, and we aren't going to receive that funding in this fiscal year. It will come in fiscal year 21, so I reduced that back out, and I did increase the permanent improvement fund up to what the balances are for that. So just two minor changes there, but I did want to give you that information for adoption, and then you'll see a temporary appropriation and what is our beginning amended, or our beginning estimated resources, which is based on the information we filed with our tax budget. I'll file that information then with Melissa, the county auditor, for her certification. We also have on the agenda the advances. The advances we have that we need to make are for our grant funds. We've already requested all the money we are allowed. That cutoff date was June 12th, but we have continued to spend. So we need to advance the money so that the fund is in the black for June 30th. And then as soon as we receive the reimbursement back from the state, we'll return those advances. So you'll see those listed tonight also. As far as school funding, I did put quite a bit of information in my notes about that. We really have not received any word. It's been really quiet. We met as a county treasurers group, and we were all sort of amazed that we haven't heard anything really. Some of that, I think, stems from the fact that the casino revenue ended up being better than we really anticipated. And so, and you probably have also heard that the economy is rebounding. So I don't know if the delay in any information is just due to the fact that they're not really certain what they're going to do yet. So like John said, we all turned in Tuesday and didn't hear any word. So we're just continuing to watch that, and we'll update you as we get into more information. We did receive our federal grant funding, and we have applied for that. We've submitted that application. It was cut slightly for about $100,000. However, the amount that we got in CARES funding offset that reduction because we received over $500,000 in CARES funding. So overall, really, we haven't had to endure any of those financial pains that maybe some of our other districts have. Even our other districts in the county have had reductions instead. So we are turning out to be more on the lucky side of that, if there's a lucky side to it. So all in all, that looks really good. We will end the year having received more than we spent, so that's great. We will have also met our debt policy regulations. So I think we have done a really good job managing that this year. And thank the administration, the supervisors. It takes everybody working together to be able to do that, and I appreciate their efforts. So.
Kristen, how many years in a row have we ended in the black?
In the black, or
yeah, in the last few years, so like almost every year.
Oh yeah.
It's just you got a good streak going here. I just want to make sure people know that.
Yeah, we want to keep that going. We also haven't been able to, 4 of the last 5 years, we've had more revenue than expenditures, which, like I said, I think our administrators get sick of me hearing, it's line 6.010, that's the key to it. And so kudos to them, because they know that's what we're stressing, and we've all been able to work towards that.
Yeah.
Well, that's enabled us to endure what we're going through right now a little better.
Yes, definitely.
Just look forward to hearing what's come next year. Well,
Right.
maybe I'm looking forward to it. I'm not sure. We need to find out, but
Well, and Kristen didn't mention, but we've met with all the building supervisors and the department supervisors just yesterday. I had a follow-up to go ahead and identify areas that we could trim based on what we assume the cuts will be. So kudos to Kristen and what she's done and our administrative team have done, but I also want the public to know that we are doing our due diligence to have contingency plans around costs and to brace for that. And as Tony and I have talked about, our goal is to not go back to taxpayers, and we've not done that for more than 10 years, and we plan to not do that. But there are things that we may have to do in the future to make sure that we can continue the fiscal stewardship that Kristen's kind of ushered in, and she's been able to keep 6 to 7 months of cash balance in the Dave Ramsey world. That's really, really good. And we're going to try to continue that because we've got to do that. So again.
yeah, and there's a level of service we need to provide, and we got to balance those two things.
Right. And we don't want to get into a fiscal watch
Absolutely.
status, because then they're in your office.
No thanks.
They're in your office like weekly or, with additional reports, and which is just going to take resources from you and your department.
Yeah, Kristen and I aren't doing that. Nope.
Yeah, and it's great that you get the buy-in from all the administrators and, and all of our teachers and parents and everyone to realize, that we're doing the best we can, and as Tony said, to supply the resources and the services that we have, and sometimes we do have to make a change, just like we do in our households. You got to be able to adjust with the times.
Yep.
Monitor and adjust, right? Okay, anything else for Kristen? All right, let's move along. I make a motion we approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Patty? Any discussion? Call vote?
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mrs. Tipping?
Yes.
Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
And Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Okay, we have 3 sets of meeting minutes to approve from May 24th, May 9th, May 20th.
We have an edit to the May 9th.
We have an edit to the May 9th. So do we edit that before or after the motion? Can I have a motion, please?
There you go. You
I'll
can have
mo-
the motion. Go for it.
I'll move.
Andrea, can I have a second?
Second.
Chris? And discussion. We have an edit to the May 9th
Edit, yeah.
meeting.
So on your May 9th meeting minutes, currently says the Board of Education met in regular session on May 9th, 2020. That should read, the Board of Education met in a special work session on May 9th, 2020. And then at the bottom where it says, on a motion by Mr. Reeser, seconded by Mrs. Tipping, the board voted to adjourn the meeting at 12:03 p.m. That should read, on a motion by Mr. Reeser, seconded by Mrs. Tipping, the board voted to adjourn the meeting with no action items at 12:03. Just clarifying that
Okay.
there were no, and it was a work session.
Any discussion? Call a vote?
Mrs. Tipping?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
And Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
Personnel items, John.
All right, so we have a handful of personnel items. I want to highlight a couple here. Rachel Will, we're really excited to make this recommendation for vocal music as well as the choir director. Rachel was a long-term sub for us a handful of years ago and has been working at Opera Columbus.
Oh.
And she brings a vast amount of experience, including leadership positions, and is going to be just phenomenal for our students. Kudos to Mr. Thornsley and Mr. Fox. They had an amazing finalist group. We felt very confident in all of them, but Rachel will do a phenomenal job for our kids. And just to clarify on the supplementals, again, I put this in my report, but the LPDC is the group that helps oversee the renewing of licenses for all staff. And we're being kind of slow to move on a number of supplemental positions because we don't know what next year looks like. Regardless of what next year looks like, the LPDC has to work because they help everyone get their license renewed. So that's why I'm making that recommendation.
And it's Rachel Weil? or Will?
Oh, Rachel Will.
Will, okay.
Correct.
That's what I read, but I wasn't sure what you
Yep.
said.
Then we also have what, Tanner Stiers?
Tan, if you've liked campus, the look of campus for minus all the rain, for the last few weeks, Tanner is an aide for us. He's a graduate of Circleville, and he's hopped on Jay's staff as kind of a sub to help us get the mowing done. This time of year, it's really difficult to do that. So Tanner's been wonderful, and it's why campus looks as good as it does.
It looks great.
I would move we approve.
I'll second.
Patty? Any discussion? Call a vote?
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mrs. Tipping?
Yes.
Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
And Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Okay, so we can make Mr. Young real nervous and adjourn.
Yeah, we could at this point. Mr. Young also, he couldn't be here this evening because he also purchased a house today. So
nice.
Mr. Young has had a very big day, and this is,
Very
as far
cool.
from a board agenda perspective, his current moment. We had over 50 applicants for the assistant principal job at the elementary. We had, I think, 6 or 7 internal applicants, just a phenomenal pool of candidates. Amazingly, I was shocked, and Mr. Urick and I talked, I didn't know how many applicants we would get in a time like this. You know, people not necessarily real confident in making that jump or whatever it is. Mr. Young has been an excellent teacher in this district. He's taken leadership roles from CEA president to dean of students, and is embedded himself in our community. He's a great role model especially for our young boys. Mr. Harris was that, and he is leaving. We see a lot of wonderful attributes in Mr. Young, so I'm excited to make the recommendation. I think he'll do a phenomenal job as the assistant principal at the elementary.
I'll move.
I'll
Second.
second.
Andrew?
Chris, who got it? Andrew? That's fine. Any discussion? I'd just like to add that I've seen Kurt work in the community too as a youth soccer league coach, and he does a phenomenal job there too. Call vote?
Mrs. Rowe?
Yes.
Mrs. Tipping?
Yes.
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
And Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Classified handbook.
Classified handbook, there were some small changes which were highlighted for you as well. This helps also align with the verbiage we have in the certified contract. So I'd like to make a motion or recommend that be approved.
Make a motion.
Chris?
Second.
Jeff? Any discussion? Call vote?
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mrs. Rowe?
Yes.
And Mrs. Tipping?
Yes.
School calendar.
As I mentioned in my report, I would like to amend our student calendar for students in grades 1 through 12 to arrive on Tuesday, August the 25th. The staff calendar will not change, with new staff orientation being August the 12th. The rest of the staff will report on August the 13th, and there will be no other adjustments in the calendar. We will not be adding days or anything like that. We are literally just moving the start of grades 1 through 12 back to Tuesday, August 25th.
K through 12.
1 through 12. We stagger start the kindergartners,
Oh,
so they
okay.
will come a little later.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Andrea? Jeff? Any discussion?
Jonathan, if I may ask, is there anything with the calendar that could change depending on the governor's discussions or gatherings or anything, or?
Yeah, in this twilight zone we live in currently, the answer to all of that is yes. Unfortunately, we don't necessarily know. We have been told that the governor is going to allow districts to command their own their calendars, as long as they fit it within the blended learning model and all of that. So right now, we feel confident that moving that back a week, we really shouldn't need to make any other adjustments at the moment. The big question is, once we get into the year and certain scenarios come up, what do you do there?
Right.
And truth be told, we're trying to live moment by moment. We don't necessarily know all those answers yet. But
Great.
right now, we feel pretty confident that we have the autonomy to do this.
Great.
And part of that moving back, as we said with ours, depending on how the winter goes, may have an impact there too. So, yeah, there'll be lots of opportunities to look at that, I think.
Most definitely.
Any more? Call vote?
Mrs. Tipping?
Yes.
Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mrs. Rowe?
Yes.
And Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Special services.
This is the time of year where we try to line up some summer services as well as extended school year services for specific students who may need that from a special needs perspective. Mr. Uhrig is making these recommendations, and I'd like to recommend them.
I move we approve.
I'll second.
Patty, any discussion?
I just said, is Mr. Uhrig the contact that kind of is in constant communication with these folks?
Yeah, so great question. All of these folks. So Mr. Uhrig, because he's in charge of special education, he also does a lot of our alternative placement. He's our point of contact typically for the alternative school. All of these, especially under special services, are contracts that he works through. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give me some background? Have we worked with each one of these for how many years?
Briar Patch we've worked with for a very long time. The Learning Spectrum is probably 3 to 4 years. Soundscape Music Therapy is written into some students' IEP. We've had them for at least 3 or 4 years. The Down Syndrome Association, I think we did a summer program with them last year. I think this is the second year. Kyle, you can speak up.
Year two.
2. Okay.
You too?
And it's actually done on our campus. This year it'll be only our students in Logan currently, because that's all been enrolled. So, yeah.
Okay, I'm just curious. I looked them all up kind of online, and they all provide such unique kinds of services.
Yeah. Yeah, we offer a lot of different things. If it's unique and interesting, it probably comes through Mr. Uhrig's office.
Lucky him.
Yeah.
Good job, Kyle.
Kyle, out of curiosity, how many people do we serve through the music therapy? I know all the other ones specified the number of students, but I
We
wasn't.
actually have, so written into the IEP, it's probably less than 20.
Okay.
But with that, we serve a huge population in our cross-categorical rooms. So they go into rooms and actually perform this kind of for all children that are in there. So it's over, they see over 60 to 70 students
Wow.
total at least at a minimum when they're here. And that's
And
Yeah.
that's what I
we
assumed.
actually this year are able to up that because if you saw in the contract that we're providing the $3,000 we didn't spend at the end of this year, we're adding that to the contract this year basically so that they are coming more this year than they have in the past.
That's what I was going to ask
At
next.
the end of, because we actually owe that service to the ones that are in the IEP, so we're also adding that to the ones that it's not written.
And that's what I wondered, if we were seeing an increase or decrease,
Yes.
because I assumed it was
And
a,
at the elementary level, this is something that is much needed, and we've seen huge growth out of students because of this.
Great.
And I assume
Thank
it's
you.
just, it's absolutely more cost-effective to contract them to even consider trying to bring in our own resources?
Bring our own?
At this point?
At this point, with the amount of students that we're serving, yes,
Okay.
instead of hiring a full-time person to come in and do that right now currently. Now, if we get to that point where we're serving enough students where we feel like a full-time staff member would work, and it would be a possibility. But right now, it's cost-wise, it's the most cost-effective right now.
Okay. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Call vote?
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mrs. Rowe?
yes.
Mrs. Tipping?
Yes.
Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
And Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
The old ESC agreement. Pickaway County.
Such fervor.
It's good.
It
It's
is good. Two contracts I'd like to recommend for our partnership with the ESC, our related services contract, which is full of, it's our therapy services, preschool coordinator, those kinds of things. Pathways to Success is our alternative school located down at Mound Street, which we believe has been a massive success for our students in the district. We'd like to continue that. From a related services perspective, over the years, we've worked really hard to bring in-house some of those services because lots of times you're sharing those persons with other districts. Our school psychologists used to be in this contract. We've brought them in-house, which saves us some dollars. We have trimmed that budget over the years. This year, we're seeing basically from that contract perspective about a flat line in cost.
I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move.
I'll
Patty?
second.
Andrea?
And I have.
Any
questions.
discussion? Go ahead.
Yeah. Out of curiosity again, number
Students.
of max students. I know in the packet it said how many approximately were served, but I was curious, is there a max that we can send?
Are you talking Pathways?
Yes, Pathways, I'm sorry.
So our agreement over the course of the last few years has been less than what we've sent, but we have a great working relationship with Trent Patterson, the SRO, who we kind of worked with there, as well as PARS. So they've allowed us a little more leniency because of the way we schedule students. I think, what did we send? We sent over 30 students last year, Kyle?
We had 28 to finish the year. We had 30 different students attend. We've graduated 4 of those students from down there. 3 actually bars, I apologize, before it was from Westfall. So we're starting to see some growth in this program. And you're seeing that there have been students that have been down there multiple years now. They're actually graduating from the program. So-
And when we negotiated it originally, it was for 15 students.
So we're
Yeah.
definitely, okay.
And they do also get a credential. So, I mean, most of them are taking the woodshop program and they're getting a credential out there. At least keep in mind that program through where they're also in a great partnership with them.
And they are, this year, moving the wood shop into the Mound Street location. So the previous structure, if you remember from the beginning, they were at the ESC in that small building in the back. They then split the units up, and they were at Mound Street with the wood shop staying at the ESC, and now everything will be at Mound Street. So
Good.
Tony, being a board member at Pickaway Ross, that has been a massive benefit. So
And I will say, Jeff, to go back to your point, we have brought some students back from some of the other areas that come back to this program as well. We look to try to get as many students back in the county as we can, coming from Briar Patch and some of those other places. So we are trying to get those students back and incorporated into this program. Each year, it seems we've been able to expand this program at Pathways to reach more students that we were sending out. So we can definitely get you guys the numbers on the students we had out in those areas and now what we currently have back within our district. So it's a pretty good ratio coming back to us now.
That's awesome.
And I read the prior month, Chris Thornsley works very instrumentally in utilizing this, and you had commented about that, and that's still an initiative of his to get these, the students that need to use this program in there, or?
It's, and ironically, or not ironically, but Kurt Young was the main point of contact at the high school when he was here as Dean of Students, working obviously with Chris and Trent. And over the course of time, we have started to figure out what the perfect combination, or not the perfect, but the best combination has been. And Jason Wells was a huge benefit to that program this year from an instructional perspective. Was great support for the staff and for the students. It's just as we've gone more and more in time, we've recognized how big a benefit. Lots of those students would tell you they'd prefer to stay in that alternative programming as opposed to coming back sometimes because they feel like they get a bit more of that one-on-one attention and instruction. And again, kudos. Kyle spends a lot of time talking to Trent Patterson and Paris and those folks. It is a very intensive program for them, but when you look at it compared to some of those other contracts you see, sending those kids out of the county, we recognized, let's keep them here where we can
More
hold
interaction.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they probably feel more part of
Yeah.
their school that they are.
Yeah, they're still in their community.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, call vote?
Mrs. Grote?
Yes.
Mrs. Tipping?
Yes.
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
And Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Online curriculum.
We've recognized that our staff did an amazing job in the spring, did absolutely the best they could in short notice. But one of the biggest components we heard from staff members as well as parents was a common, consistent curriculum, a learning management system, if you will, that just provided some consistency and support for them and for staff who were really trying to grasp at what we could do to make the spring work. We have vetted a number of online resources. There are what seems like thousands of them out there with different structures, and I'd like to recommend Florida Virtual. This is an actual school district in Florida who has created an entirely online curriculum. They help support it. They'll help train our staff. We're going to do it in grades K through 8, and our CARES funding will help cover this cost.
I move we approve.
I'll second.
Is this an annual fee? Is it a higher fee to start? I know we had talked, well, I hadn't talked, but I had heard conversation at one point about creating a virtual academy. And I think there's a great benefit to that versus going out of the district to a virtual academy.
Right.
I guess how's that going to work going
Yeah,
forward?
so there are some annual recurring fees there, and the professional development won't be, and some of the implementation stuff will not be, but there is those student fees you saw, those are per year seat fees.
Okay.
But to put it this way, and Chris and I, we've already talked about the budget a little bit, you know, one of the biggest expenses or one of the biggest dollar amounts that leaves this district, all public school districts, are for students who leave to go to either a non-public or to go to an online school. And we've worked really hard to bring those students back. In fact, our open enrollment numbers are just about even, and for the first time in a long time, meaning we're bringing as many kids in as we have students who would be leaving. But we didn't have a good online option for kids who maybe they needed to stay home for behavior, attendance, special needs. We haven't had that, especially in the elementary. To give you some context, based on the state funding formula, you know, those students leave, you lose that $5,000 to $6,000 per student that leaves with them. If we can create a better option here with our teachers we know and trust supporting it, that we know are the best teachers for these kids, if you keep less than 10 of those kids, you've already paid for that.
Yep.
So we really feel like, even though there will be some recurring cost to it, this is a natural next step for us.
And maybe I'm off, but I don't believe so. The cost to develop something like this would be astronomical compared to what we're paying.
And to support it.
Yeah.
to support
Yeah.
it,
The,
especially.
the things we vetted, when it really came down to it, and I hate to say, so obviously, everybody tells you it's content standard aligned and all those kinds of things. But in this day and age, the ease in which a kid can manipulate your software, the type of videos you stream, the graphics that are in there, those things matter to students. They matter to families from an ease of login perspective, the data reports, and we would never be able to do that.
Yeah.
This group has already done that, so yeah, that's.
I think it's a phenomenal opportunity, even absent of COVID. It's something to do.
Yeah.
Any more discussion?
Can you tell us about the relationship of, I see Fairfield Educational Services and then Florida, as well as the training for our staff? I mean, what type of training will help them?
Good question. Fairfield County ESC has had a relationship with Florida Virtual for quite some time now. They had initially gotten this years ago when they had received what's called a straight A grant. They purchased this software through the ESC to technically support, my understanding was, their alternative school at that time. They didn't have a curriculum for those folks or for those students. It has evolved, and their relationship has evolved, and the contract we have in front of us is essentially Fairfield County's ESC allowing us to be a part of a consortia, even though we're not a part of the county. That provided us some price breaks. You noticed in the initial contract, $175 for the first, I think it was 100 students, and then after that, you saw a drastic reduction in that student fee. We would not have gotten that being on our own. Because we joined them, that helps. The professional development piece is extensive, but they recognize that just a sit and get 8-hour session is not productive. So it's broken into 4 2-hour chunks. And all of our teachers, we're not going to do a train-the-trainer model. All of our teachers are going to get this from grades K through 8, so that they're all educated on it. And then we, as an administrative team, are going to set up a platform how we support it from a user or an administrative perspective. So the moving the school year back gives us the time to do that professional development right, and allows teachers time to not just have to sit it and then go do it. They'll be able to sit in it, take their time, absorb it, because we've never done it before, and we're going to teach it in the classroom and when kids go home, so it provides a common platform for all parents. So there's a lot that comes with it, and Florida Virtual runs all that. And the beauty of being with the Fairfield ESC is they already have a ton of people they've been doing it for years that can then come and support our teachers. So we're kind of getting the best of both worlds there.
Out of curiosity, will they have a link or a way that a parent could access? Okay, good.
Yeah, they've got a
Thinking-
parent portal, all of that kind of stuff that we'll push out. Nathan has already vetted it from a login perspective, because that's one thing parents said a lot, like, my kid's got 1,000 logins. I can't remember what this one, and that's very true. I mean, my kids were the same way. So we're working on what that's going to look like. But yes, we're definitely going to address that parent piece.
And my thought is that you can train the teachers, you can train the students, but will the students be able to retain it, remember it, and then turn to the parent and say, I don't know what I'm doing? So the parent's going to need to be
Yes.
able, good.
The licenses, it looks like they're unique to each student, if I understand it correctly.
Yes.
And if that student leaves, we lose that license.
Yes. So.
And we have to get another license if somebody else comes into the.
Correct.
So is that a concern at all, or
So.
it's like $200 a license?
Yeah,
right?
so, well, after it'll be the
Reduced
lower rate. It used to be a lot of these platforms were seat licensed based. So if you pictured a classroom of 30 seats, you bought 30 licenses, and it didn't matter which kid popped in and out of that seat as long as
Right.
no more than 30 kids were on it at the same time. The market for that basically changed, and I think COVID drove that, because they knew districts needed this, so that is a concern of ours. The concern being, we're going to make sure we cover, more than enough from a K-8 perspective, But we are also a district that, has some transiency to us. So we're going to have times throughout the year where we're going to have to add kiddos. There is a threshold of a student being online. So if a student isn't online more than 13 days, I think it is. So if a kid hasn't logged in for 13 days, we have the ability to remove them from that seat and put someone else in there. So if we have a kid working from
Okay,
home
good.
that won't log in, we as an administrative team have to make sure that we change that prior to the end of the second week, basically. We met on that a little bit this morning, but Florida Virtual and Fairfield are going to have to guide us a little bit in that. It's a concern.
Okay.
Can you flip from being a virtual student to being in-person student? Or obviously we would add the in-person ones, but can you bounce back and forth?
It's a
or-
good question. So we're going to create the guidelines once we get some things from the governor. For anybody, we've had that question a lot. If a person is going to be an online learner, meaning they're working from home, they're not coming in here in any fashion, we're going to require they make a commitment of at least a semester. At the turn of the semester, or if there's some extenuating circumstance that I approve them to come back prior to that, then they can make that change. But we need folks, and that's on that the application listen, Chris. We need folks to understand that this is a semester by semester situation so that we can plan also. It's not fair to our staff or and technically based on, in this health crisis, having kids kind of come in and out, it just wouldn't work. So we're going to require at a minimum a semester.
And what we did was phenomenal, but it needs to be a lot better.
We all agree.
There was very little instruction going on with that. So this, I think, from what I saw, it looks like it'll take care of that. So.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
We're talking about K through 8. Are we going to discuss at a later date the high school 9 through 12 at a later time, or do you want to briefly let us know?
The high school is going to continue to utilize Google Classroom, but there are a couple key questions we have to answer, and we're already in the process of kind of answering those. I should have a finalized plan per se in July, as long as the governor gives us that stuff. But the beauty of the Google Classroom is, from a platform perspective, they've already used the platform. There are a number of questions we need to answer, like, what does direct instruction look like? If students are working from home, how are they getting direct teacher instruction? Not a video, not a worksheet, direct instruction. How do we how do we sync all the logging, because you jump from here to Pearson to whatever. How do we do that? We need to do that, and we got to inform parents. Progress book. How do we update progress book? Because it needs to be done on a consistent district platform, and it needs to be done on a routine basis so parents can expect that, as well as how they communicate back and forth. So we're working on that. That will come. And I mentioned that because that was a big part of what high school parents told us. We appreciate all you did. Your teachers did amazing things. Here are the concerns for next year, and those were them. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Couple more questions.
Yeah.
How's it look on a mobile phone? Because that's how kids are going to want to use it.
Sure.
Or iPads, or?
Yeah. So it looks better than most on a mobile phone, but that's something we're going to have to communicate as well. So most of these didn't look great on a mobile phone, which, truth be told, if you recall, you passed an agenda item to get us more Chromebooks in the elementary, and every one of the online learners, there will be a question about their device capability, if they have them or if they need them. Nathan and I, we met in our supervisors meeting yesterday about permanent improvement dollars and those kinds of things. We are committed for devices not to be an issue this year. So,
And I think the phone issue would be more of, K through 8 will be less of an issue than
Well, that's true. But,
high
well,
school.
you get the
Less.
7th and 8th. Yeah. Definitely the elementary.
And then I've seen where other districts are doing like this bus Wi-Fi thing as well, because some of our students might not have, Wi-Fi in their homes.
So there is also a House bill you mentioned in the legislative update about equity and providing broadband for across all communities. And we had a really good response we're city proper basically, so internet access here is not terribly difficult. other than cost prohibitive maybe. But in a place like Logan Elm, and you know, Mr. Williams and I talk quite a bit, up on the top of Thompson Ridge, you don't have real great internet regardless of what your socioeconomic status is. So that's in the house, I think, right now. That's a big one. But Nathan has already gone out and bought a handful of hot spots that we can identify places in town where we can go out and sit these in parking lots or whatever. So beyond them being able to come here in our parking lot and grab Wi-Fi, maybe there are a few hot spots downtown that we situate where people can walk to and sit in a park. Or, you know, we can put at a local restaurant that might be beneficial if and when they can open.
Right.
So we kind of contemplated that.
Great.
Nathan, do you know, can you remote into this to help support kids that are working from home? Or either through one of their tools, or do you have a tool to do that?
I haven't got that far in yet, but I can get it from
Oh, okay, yeah. Then you should be able to, yeah. Okay. I mean, like online, so they can actually work through with them, so.
So like a share your screen thing, or?
Right.
Nathan has remoted into my computer before, and it's creepy.
It's creepy.
It is creepy.
It is creepy. And my last question is, it's hosted, they host it, so are they actually hosting it, or is it AWS, or any idea? Is it hosted by, do they actually host it themselves, or is it like through AWS, or? I'm just curious on that one.
We haven't got that far. I'm sure they cloud hosted it.
Yeah. Yeah, it says it's cloud hosted except for the cloud
Does it?
licenses.
Azure, Google Cloud, what exactly?
Okay.
That might be good to know. Okay, that's all I got. Sorry.
Any more discussion? Call vote.
No.
Don't keep asking, Tony.
That's right.
Yes.
Mr. Burrow.
Yes.
Mrs. Rowe.
Yes.
Mrs. Tipping.
Yes.
And Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Okay, this next one should be brief, I think. Professional development regarding Florida virtual school.
I'd like to professionally develop our staff. I'm asking
I
for
move
your
we
recommendations.
approve.
Second.
Yeah.
Chris seconded. Call vote.
Mr. Reeser.
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Mrs. Rowe.
Yes.
Mrs. Tipping.
Yes.
And Mr. Burrow.
Yes.
Okay, local assessments.
NWEA is a assessment database we use for students across the district. They also have come up with a new online assessment piece that if students are working from home, we can still assess them in some form or fashion from home. We like to just continue working with them.
I move.
Patty,
I'll second.
Andrea, any discussion? Call vote.
Mrs. Rowe.
Yes.
Mrs. Tipping.
Yes.
Mr. Reeser.
Yes.
Mr. Burrow.
Yes.
And Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
Bullying reports.
You had the bullying reports in your packet. Per law, like to recommend those be approved so that we can get those uploaded on our website.
Make a motion.
Chris?
Second.
Jeff? Any discussion?
I had asked earlier to John if it seemed that they were up or down from the previous semester.
Yeah, so there's a couple things to look at. Pretty even from a middle school perspective. Elementary perspective, we're doing a better job of tracking. Aaron Kahn has taken the charge on that. It's basically about flat, but you notice he's put some more notes and things in there. We use Abe, that platform. And one of the things Aaron's doing a great job of is recognizing that, and then you also saw some of the disciplinary, which also had some counseling pieces and all that in there. So I like to tell folks that, we do run a school district to 2,300 students. We get calls from time to time from families and parents that use the term bullying. When we look into those sometimes, they're not necessarily repetitive, which is the definition of bullying, but we always address them. Sometimes they don't end up on that report because they don't fit the definition. So I get that question every once in a while. We're seeing, it's not a trend that concerns us in any way, shape, or form. Yeah.
Good.
And I saw in earlier your reports, how you address a lot of these up front, before they really turn into an incident, that then is on this report, and how you work with the students and, kind of filter those things out immediately.
Yeah, our assistant principals take a lot of pride in kind of getting ahead of the game. And the resources you've allotted us from our anonymous reporting, and then as well as the state's anonymous reporting, and truthfully, the SRO, are some of our greatest resources when it comes to making connections before a school day starts so that you can intervene. Years ago, no one talked about it until the fight started in the lunchroom. Now we have so many different ways to communicate with families and so many different avenues. We know lots of times, some of these anonymous things, we'll get calls at 2 o'clock in the morning. So believe me, we know. And so at 6 a.m., that assistant principal's either called somebody or is waiting on that kiddo when they get off the bus. They take a lot of pride in that.
Okay. Call vote?
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mrs. Tippy?
Yes.
Consulting agreement, Kristen.
I'd just like to recommend that we continue with TSA as our consultant for the administration and compliance of the 403Bs and the 457s.
I move we approve.
I'll second.
Andrea. Any discussion?
As Patty has asked before, how long have we used TSA?
We switched to them last year. It's a free service.
Oh, good.
It's at no cost, but basically, they solicited us. We actually attended a session they had at OASBO at the conference, and we liked what they had to offer, so.
Great, thank you.
Call vote?
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mrs. Tipping?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
And Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
And as part of our
Go ahead, you're good. Keep going
Part
on.
of our review of the administrative guidelines, we put in there that we would adopt the rate, and we recommend that we go with the IRS mileage rate for reimbursement of district mileage.
I move.
Patty, I have a second.
I'll second.
Jeff. Any discussion?
Is that a change from the prior year? Did we have our own rate?
Yes.
Okay.
We've had it, and we haven't raised that rate for probably 10 years.
I was going to say, I don't ever
think
remember it
since
being
I've
any
been here.
different than what it was.
50 cents, so it will be up a little bit.
Yeah, 57 or something,
57.
7.5 or whatever.
Any other discussion? Call vote?
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mrs. Tipping?
Yes.
And Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Jonathan, tennis court project.
Just requesting the ability to proceed with a request for proposal to look into some necessary renovations we have at the tennis court. This in no way, shape, or form obligates the board to any work. It just allows us to do a bit more of a deep dive on what it would take from a cost and structure perspective to fix and enhance our tennis courts. We have done a lot of work prior to this, Mr. Urig and Mr. Spradlin, to confirm that the base of our current tennis court is sufficient, because we've done a lot of research on if we needed to move that, and we have confirmed that we have the appropriate amount of base underneath the current courts. We would just like to continue to look into this, and this action will allow us to do that.
I would move we approve.
Second?
Chris? Yeah, I mean, those core samples were vital, and then it makes sense to continue on the path we were on.
Yeah, I think, again, to reiterate from the public's perspective, we're in no way, shape, or form, we recognize the environment, but it is our job to continue. And the tennis court is not in what we believe is sufficient shape, and that work needs to be done at some point. The timing may not be right now, but we need to do our due diligence to make sure we know what the next step is. Yeah.
One positive note is those core samples did tell us that our
Yeah.
below was better than what we were
Yes.
Yeah,
fearing it would be.
we were skeptical, so that came back. That was a positive, and they did that in 3 or 4 different areas, so that was good.
So it's just the pyrite on top that's,
Yeah,
Is that
so
what
the
it's called?
pyrite, it's
Yeah.
not to go into revisionist history here, but the pyrite was the first problem we noticed.
Yeah.
And then as the courts started to fail in certain areas, we started to worry that the base underneath them was a
Right.
problem, and there wasn't enough gravel and all of that. Thankfully, we've confirmed that's not the issue. The mix was obviously a problem, which is why the pyrite and the cracking and all of that.
Okay. Call vote?
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
yes.
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mrs. Tipping?
Yes.
And Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
Frontline contract, Kristen, you already touched on that in your,
Yes, I'd like to add this to the agenda if we could. We'd like to recommend to allow us to proceed with the additional frontline products not to exceed $26,000.
I move.
I'll second.
Patty and Andrea? I mean, we've already vetted this company, we're using them to store data already. It makes sense if we can converge more. It's got to be cheaper to go with the same company than to start another relationship, I would think.
Tell them how much we were spending on storage prior to moving to
Well, we were
Frontline.
spending about $50,000 just to store records. So we're getting to do different functions and having different processes all.
For less cost.
Yeah.
And it's also going to be good for employees, kind of like with the online package we bought. This will keep employees going to one place to do mainly all their HR type things, their student service type things. So I think it'll make it a lot easier, a lot more user-friendly for our staff too.
And I would think it'd be easier for an IT perspective as well. So, our IT department, Nathan, is not supporting so many different vendors and working with so many groups. And when they do updates and, they push those out, hey, where's the update for our other services, not just for this one piece? So he's not having to go to so many, different vendors for the updates. So I think that's smart to align them all together. But but with aligning, how long has Frontline been around? If they ever dissolve or something, so then we're all in one, oh, we lost a big vendor. I mean,
I don't think that will be the case.
okay, good.
They've been around for quite a while, and they seem to be purchasing up the other.
Of the smaller ones.
Okay.
I had one question. We don't go through a partner with them, right? I don't see any list of a partner. We work directly with,
We work directly with them.
and is that person out of Columbus?
No,
'Cause I don't see
she is
any-
actually out of Cleveland.
Oh, out of Cleveland, okay. All right. So
Susie would
headquartered
know.
in.
Susie talks to her about
Yeah.
every day.
Oh,
Got to-
okay.
Susie, our administrative rep in the crowd, do you know where Daylin's from?
Okay, I was just curious. They're headquartered in Malvern, PA, which is a good trip.
Products too, so almost everything we're using is going to be a Frontline.
Just be a Frontline
Really?
product.
They just, they're buying everybody out.
And I had the same question that I had on the other product. Can, like, the nurse use a mobile phone on this as well and enter
Yes,
data?
That was one of the things, remember, we went to the time and attendance,
For the phone.
and so they can access all that through an app on the phone.
That's fantastic. Okay.
Anything else? Call vote?
Mrs. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mrs. Tipping?
Yes.
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
And Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Treasurer's items.
I went over most of these earlier. We do want to go ahead and establish the class of 2024. And then we will add to the over 10,000s, the front line. We did go ahead and seek quotes this week too while we were working on this, just so if we did have the ability to put it on, we'd have the quotes to go with that. I'll have Kate upload that into your board packet, all this information, so that you won't have to hold on to the paper documents, but I'll have that added. You'll see also, John mentioned earlier, but I think we should recognize again, we tried to hold off all the COVID meal donations to one board meeting to recognize all of them, and they're all listed there. So definitely a big thank you to all of those people for making that so successful for us.
Okay, I move we approve.
A second?
On our legal fees, if we don't use our $20,000 worth, do
Oh,
we?
yeah, it's just a.
It's just a
Placeholder, basically?
It's just a PO.
Right. We also, like John said, we had already put on the agenda, Gellner, that's our insurance. We ended up coming in right at the same price almost as last year. We were about $3,000 more, but we did discuss some savings options where we may be able to recoup that, so it should come in just about the same price as we had last year.
In looking at our appropriations, the final appropriation to the temporary one from FY '21, I noticed there wasn't much change from where you ended last year to what you're proposing for this year, and it was mainly in your special revenue funds
Correct, those grant funds.
where you're asking, okay, for those, and where you amended the certificates and things.
Yeah, remember the wellness, with funding last year, our funding stayed the same, but it got moved. Our state funding broke out a section called student wellness, so that's not in the general fund anymore, so that makes a difference. That's included in those special revenues. And then the CARES funding, that 500, well, we received over $500,000
Right.
in CARES funding.
And we've already received that CARES funding.
It's been dropped into the CCIP and we've applied for it. We're just waiting for the approval, but all indications, yeah, that should be ready to spend July 1.
And then
Okay.
you have to break those out once you receive them into a new fund or whatever.
The
Okay.
CARES funding, I think, is that 507.
Right. Then all the advances that we're proposing will cover all of your balances for the year. And do you anticipate any additional fund transfers or advances?
No, not at this time, I do not, which is great news. Because,
Yeah.
earlier in the year, we weren't sure that was going to be the case, but our lunchroom fund ended up with a fairly healthy balance for the lunchroom. And then athletics, sometimes we also kind of get a little concerned about, and they also ended positive, so we don't anticipate any need for that. Of course, this day and age, we didn't anticipate COVID, so I say that with a little hesitation, but no, right at this time, we're not anticipating.
Any other questions for Kristen?
Gordon Flush.
Give you a minute.
So then, for the Gordon Flush, you'll just request another purchase order as the year progresses? Because right now it's July to September. You do that quarterly or?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Call vote?
Mr. Reeser?
Yes.
Mrs. Rowe?
Yes.
Mrs. Tipping?
Yes.
Mr. Burrow?
Yes.
And Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Okay, that covers all our regular business. As we've said numerous times during this meeting, there's a whole lot going on in the world right now. Chris brought up, let's look at our policies, let's look at our possibly a board resolution on regarding equality and anti-racism and all those things. Jonathan put out a message earlier this month. I thought it was excellent. Just wanted to try to feel out the board, see if you thought there was anything. Regarding the policy, I looked through policy. I think we've got quite a bit covering. Jonathan found even more than I did, and I think, does everybody have that?
Yes, thank you.
That'd be something good to look at. I am going to ask that the policy committee reach out to Neola and just ask them if there's any updates needed to any of those policies. And then if they feel it's urgent, we could do that right away. If they feel the next update would be satisfactory, I'm okay with that too. And as I said, Jonathan put out a really good statement. I thought, personally, I don't see a need for a board resolution at this time. I think we've done a good job dealing with those things, and I hope we continue. But if I'm open to discussion, if somebody thinks we would like to do that, or if a majority thinks we need to put out a resolution, we could certainly entertain that. It would take a little while to develop, but
I think it's good to have this broken out like it is, and we can all refer to it and refer people to it. This is all online, so.
Yeah, that's a combination of policies as well as handbook guidance on every topic regarding discrimination and harassment. Inclusive in there is some policy that states if there are complaints or concerns, as well as professional development. And, just my 2 cents and, my statement will stand for me and what I believe we are as a school district. But one of the things I said in that statement is, I learned a long time ago that the words don't matter nearly as much as action.
That's right.
And there's a lot of wordsmith right now for probably a lot of good reason, maybe, but it's what we do from here. And I have a group of staff members. We have a great staff, but I have a group of staff members who's offered to join me and kind of look through and audit what we do from an entire district perspective, just to make sure that we have our eyes open to make sure we're treating each and every soul that walks through that door, whether they're a staff member or a kid, with the appropriate love and care and respect. That's kind of my belief. And so we've started those conversations. We've got staff members across this district reading books on every topic, from anti-racism to social emotional wellness and that kind of stuff. So this is at the top of our list. Neola, I'll touch on that. Neola would send me an email before you all would even think about it, and that's no slight to you. That's Neola's job, and they haven't sent anything out right now because there's so many moving parts that most likely, my understanding is they're going to include that any updates in the fall packet. Because again, you saw those House bills and Senate bills. There are topics inclusive in there, and to jump in front of that right now, you might be changing it in 2 months by law anyway.
Right.
So I prefer to focus on what we do actually as a district, and I feel confident about what we're going to do for the fall. So.
Right.
And there's certainly other things that we already talked about tonight that feed into this, like the bullying reports, and, that's all part of this, right?
Yeah. Good.
And I want to thank you, Tony, as well as Jonathan, for, where I brought this suggestion up to look at it,
Oh,
and
yeah,
just to discuss
absolutely.
it as a board. And it's amazing that we already have a lot of the policies already in place, and you're talking about it already, and everybody's aware, and the continued professional development, because, the implicit biases, things that we don't know about ourselves, that we're learning, and reading the different books and, and understanding everyone and respecting them and their dignity, and no matter, whether it's your racial class or your gender or your economic status or whatever, to realize that we all come from different areas.
Today on the BASA call that we got no state guidance on, at the end of it, there was about 60 superintendents, and I say this guy's name a lot, and my admin team probably hates that I say it, but Matt Miller is the superintendent at Lakota, and he really is a mover and someone I respect a lot in the state. And he requested a handful of us to start a group, and invited myself to kind of join that and start this conversation because we are not naive to the fact that, over the course of time, we may not know what we don't know.
Right.
As much as we want to love and care, that there's maybe certain things we can improve upon. So we're going to have that conversation next week, kind of a kickoff. So even from a state level, that's at the top of everyone's list. So this is kind of a time to listen and learn, and that's what we're doing.
I think what might be coming that's beyond this, that we already have in place, is more how we teach. I think there's going to be a lot of changes and
Sure.
curriculum down the road.
Mhm.
That's a whole different,
I would agree.
not a whole different, but a different
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we move on. Jonathan, that's great news that you're going to be on that group from BASA. And yeah, that's excellent. You'll be able to share some of the insights from around the state and bring that back, so that's good. I appreciate you doing that. Anybody have anything else for the meeting? Oh, did we need to discuss changing date of?
We do.
There was a.
I'm here for some reason. You know?
It was on the, you mentioned what dates, sir?
So I'll just give you what, I will be out the week of the actual board meeting schedule, the week of the 12th. I'll be out from the 12th through the 18th. Kristen, you are out the week following or the week before?
The very end of.
So you're out the week of the 26th through August 1?
Pending.
Well,
Yeah, these are all tentative vacation plans that may never come to fruition.
Still need the time
I
off.
will not be able to do the July 21st, but I can do the July 22nd.
I can do 22nd.
What day is the 22nd?
22nd's the Wednesday, and Kristen and I could accommodate a morning or an evening if,
July 22nd is a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is a normal board day we have.
Anybody be available for the 23rd? I've got something on the 22nd that I
I
would
can do
really
23rd.
disappoint somebody if I
I will
didn't go
be
to.
out starting that week.
You're out the rest of the week? So you can't do the 23rd?
Several. I'm not going to say it out loud.
and I don't necessarily know how,
When was the original date?
15,
The 15th.
yeah.
Okay.
So we're
And I
just,
can do any time on the 22nd. I can make any time work.
technically, I mean, I guess.
I was probably going to have a short, I don't know if it even, executive session to discuss evaluation of the superintendent and treasurer.
You want to talk about that too?
So we could talk about, was everyone good with the 15th? We could still meet on the 15th to finalize some stuff. After looking at the information we were provided by Jonathan and Kristen, our contract with them says we will evaluate them by July 31st, so I think we need to try to stick with that. So I think that's going to take maybe 2 sit-downs to finalize, and then, so we could do the 15th with Jonathan wouldn't be here, Kristen really would be no need for you to be here. It would just be discussion of the board,
So the 15th would be executive.
yes,
Hey,
and
Evan,
then,
when's our August? Do you know? Is it the 12th?
It's early.
The 12th?
8th maybe,
Is it the 5th?
it might be. I have it, just a second. The 5th is the board meeting, yeah. So whatever else we would have, could we wait till the 5th?
Possibly, I guess.
Wait and see.
Not an emergency, you could put what you need on an agenda item. I can be here on that Wednesday so that
Yeah.
we could approve.
Let's,
the item.
let's do this. Hold your 15th. Just keep it as is, and then if we
Well,
need to
what's
add
needed?
a quick morning meeting on a different day or something.
Okay.
And the only thing I'm thinking is, we've got some, if the guidance comes out regarding temperature checks and all that, then we've got some contracts we may need, plus there are a couple personnel items. But you and I can communicate, Tony.
Okay.
Make that work. So just
Okay,
hold
so the 15th will be a
So
regular meeting.
we're holding on the 15th, regular meeting at this time. There may be
July 15th.
no agenda other than
Yeah.
executive session to discuss evaluation.
And if there is an agenda item, maybe we'll have Kyle run.
And
the
that's
meeting.
fine. That work for everybody?
Whatever.
So the 15th, the regular meeting.
Yes,
Okay. 7 PM
7 PM,
in person?
in person.
Okay.
And if it's going to be all executive session, we may just do it in the alumni room, or we could come here if we want. I don't know. We'll
Well,
play it by
Just
ear.
wait and see what we have.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can accommodate.
Okay, so, I guess, we can't really end the meeting, because we need to discuss. I want us, at 5-10 minutes tops, I'm thinking.
Do you want John to step out?
Yeah, we need to.
Yeah, and then we need to go executive, so however we
Yeah,
need to
you
do that
just
with
need
the
to go
camera.
into
but-
executive session.
We want to thank all the administrators for putting together their reports like they always do. Great information that everybody noted. So thank you.
That would be I believe, G? I was thinking G, but what is
Oh,
it, Kristen?
no, you're good. You're good, I'm sorry.
Is it A or G? I don't know.
Say.